The conference room buzzed with casual chatter as I glanced at my phone, its screen lighting up with an incoming call from Tyler. I stepped into the hallway, expecting the usual small talk. How's the trip? When are you coming home? Instead, his voice came through cold and smug. I'm divorcing you, he said. I've already sold the apartment, so you'll need to figure out where you're going to live. Enjoy that. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The audacity, the complete lack of remorse. It would have been laughable if it hadn't been so infuriating. My fingers tightened around the phone as his words sank in. You sold the apartment? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Yeah, he said with a dry chuckle. Nicole and I need the money to set up our life together. She deserves better than a tiny place like that anyway. Nicole, the name landed like a slap. I'd suspected someone else for months. Tyler's late nights, the sudden business trips, the emotional distance, all signs pointed to a third party, but hearing her name from his mouth, so casually, as if I were the outsider, it lit a fire in my chest. Sounds good, I replied coolly. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of hearing me break. My name is Amelia, and up until that phone call, I thought I'd married a man I could trust. Tyler and I had been together for 6 years. It hadn't always been perfect, but I believed in us. We'd worked hard to buy that apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom in the city I'd fallen in love with at first sight. It wasn't just a home, it was a symbol of everything we'd built together, or so I thought. Looking back, the cracks had always been there. Tyler's evasiveness when I asked about our finances, his dismissiveness, always covered with a charming smile and a quick kiss. I'd mistaken manipulation for confidence. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I sat through meetings, nodding in all the right places, while my mind raced. Tyler thought he'd won, thought he could sell the home I'd worked so hard for and walk away clean. But he didn't know one critical detail. The apartment deed had been transferred into my name alone months ago. After we refinanced earlier this year, I'd had it done quietly. Tyler hadn't paid much attention to the paperwork. Lower interest rates had distracted him. He'd signed without reading. His carelessness would be his undoing. By the time I returned to my hotel room that night, my shock had hardened into resolve. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. If Tyler wanted a fight, then a fight he would get. My first call was to Chloe, my lawyer and longtime friend. I laid everything out, my voice calm even as my heart pounded. He sold the apartment? She repeated, incredulous. Does he even realize he can't legally do that? Apparently not, I said, a hint of amusement in my voice. He's already counting the money for his new life with Nicole. Chloe gave a dry laugh. Well, he's in for a rude awakening. The sale's invalid. You're the sole owner. If he's taken any money from the buyer, he could be looking at fraud charges. The word fraud sent a satisfying chill through me. What's our move? I asked. First, we'll notify the buyer and let them know the sale isn't legal. Then I'll draft a formal letter to Tyler outlining the consequences. If he tries anything else, we'll take him to court. As I hung up, a strange sense of calm settled over me. Tyler thought he'd blindsided me, thought I was powerless, but in reality, he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. I spent the rest of the trip focused on work, channeling my emotions into preparation. The betrayal still stung, but the thought of watching Tyler's smugness dissolve gave me a clarity I hadn't felt in months. When I boarded the plane home, I was ready. Ready to face him. Ready to dismantle his lies. Ready to reclaim my life. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about taking back control. The flight home gave me hours to think about how everything had unraveled. Tyler hadn't even tried to hide his betrayal. He saw me as an obstacle, someone to bulldoze through on his way to freedom. But he had no idea I'd been quietly setting the foundation for this moment. As the plane touched down, I called Chloe. I'm back, I said as I pulled my suitcase from the carousel. What's the next step? We've already notified the buyer, she replied briskly. They were shocked and very unhappy with Tyler. Fortunately, they're willing to cooperate. That helps our case. I sent the formal letter to his email this morning, Chloe replied. It outlines the illegality of the sale, your sole ownership of the apartment, and the potential consequences of fraud. He hasn't responded yet, but if I had to guess, he's going to be furious. Good, I thought. Let him stew. When I arrived home, the apartment felt different. Tyler's things were still there, his jacket carelessly slung over the chair, Shoes kicked off near the door, but the air had shifted. What was once our shared space now felt like mine, and his presence like an unwelcome ghost. I took a deep breath and set down my suitcase. The confrontation was coming. I could feel it. And sure enough, it came that evening. Tyler burst through the door, red-faced and seething, waving Chloe's letter in his hand like it was a personal insult. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." "No, it's not," I said, arms crossed. "The deed's been in my name for months. You can't sell what you don't own." He froze, confusion flickering across his face before it twisted into fury. "What are you talking about?" I reached for the file I'd pulled earlier and held the deed out for him to see. "After we refinanced, I had the title transferred to me. You signed off on it. Or did you just skim the paperwork like you always do?" He said nothing for a moment. Then his lips curled into a sneer. "You think you're so smart. This doesn't change anything. I already made a deal. When it falls apart, you'll look like a fool." I didn't blink. "The sale's already void, Tyler. The buyer knows it. And they're ready to take legal action if the deposit isn't returned." I stepped closer, voice low and steady. "And if you've spent even a cent of that money, you're looking at real trouble." For the first time, he wavered. "You don't know what you're talking about," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. "Oh, I do," I said calmly. "You've spent years treating me like I'm too naive to notice the way you manipulate everything, but I've been watching, and now you're going to face the consequences." He began pacing, frustration bubbling over. "This is insane. You're blowing this out of proportion. You can't just kick me out." I raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I can. This apartment is legally mine. You can stay for now, because I'm giving you the courtesy of time, but don't mistake that for weakness. I'm not going anywhere." In the days that followed, Tyler's fury turned into desperation. He left a string of voicemails, bouncing between pleading and threats. Chloe moved swiftly behind the scenes, filing notices, contacting the buyer, laying the groundwork for divorce. The buyer's furious. She told me, "They've officially rescinded the agreement and are considering action against Tyler for misrepresentation. And with the fraud implications, we have a solid case. You're in a strong position, Amelia." Her words were a bomb, but also a mirror reflecting the years I'd spent letting Tyler take the lead, minimizing myself to keep the peace. That time was over. My best friend, Laura, came over one evening to help me box up his things. We stacked his belongings neatly in the corner of the living room, the pile looking smaller than I expected, like his presence had already begun to shrink. "How's he taking all this?" she asked, holding up one of his gaudy ties with a smirk. "Not well," I said, laughing in spite of everything. "He still thinks he can charm or threaten his way out of it, but I'm not budging." "Good," she said, tossing the tie into a box. "He doesn't deserve a single inch of your space, or your time." I nodded, gratitude blooming in my chest. For so long, I'd carried the emotional and financial burden of our marriage alone. Now, I had allies. I had strength. The final blow came a few days later when Tyler brought Nicole to the apartment. I was at the dining table, reviewing documents, when they walked in like they owned the place. Nicole's smug smile was instant, her arm looped around his. "So this is where we're staying," she said, glancing around as if appraising a hotel suite. I stood, heart pounding but steady. "No," I said, "this is where Tyler was staying. You, Nicole, won't be staying here at all." Her smile faltered. She looked at Tyler, confused. "What's going on?" Tyler stepped forward. "What is this?" he demanded. "This," I said, gesturing to the space around me, "is my home. Not yours, not hers, and definitely not some crash pad for your post-affair fantasy life." Nicole's expression hardened, but she said nothing. Tyler, however, was livid. "You can't do this," he shouted. "You're being unreasonable." "No, Tyler," I said, my voice calm but cutting. "What's unreasonable is thinking you could sell my home, walk away with the money, and expect me to quietly disappear. You're lucky I haven't pressed criminal charges yet." He stood there, jaw tight, fists clenched. Nicole looked increasingly uncomfortable, arms crossed, tapping her heel. "You're being ridiculous, Amelia," he said, desperation creeping into his tone. "You can't just throw me out of my own home." I took a step forward. "It's not your home, Tyler. The deed's been in my name for months. You signed the papers without reading them, just like always. So no, this isn't your home anymore. Nicole's eyes narrowed. Wait, what's she talking about? She asked, turning to him sharply. You told me you owned it, that you sold it. Tyler flinched. It's complicated. I'll handle it. Oh, it's not complicated, I said, stepping closer, eyes locked on Nicole's. He lied. About the apartment, about the sale, about everything. You tried to sell an apartment that doesn't belong to you, I said, my voice calm but sharp. The sale is void, Tyler. And right now, you have no leg to stand on. Nicole's composure finally cracked. Wait, the money you said you had, she stopped mid-sentence, eyes wide. Her voice rose. Oh my God. Did you lie about that too? Nicole, let me explain, Tyler said quickly, hands raised in desperation. No, I cut in, stepping between them. Let me explain. I turned to Nicole. Tyler tried to sell this apartment behind my back, thinking he could pocket the money and leave me with nothing. What he didn't know was that the deed has been in my name for months. He signed it over when we refinanced. So not only did he fail to sell it, he committed fraud by pretending he could. Nicole's mouth opened, then shut again, like she couldn't catch her breath. Fraud, she whispered, backing away from him. Are you serious? Yes. Fraud, I said, arms folded. And if he doesn't get his things out by the end of the day, I'm prepared to press charges. Tyler's mask finally cracked. You can't do this, Amelia, he pleaded. We've been together 6 years. You can't just throw me out. You threw me out the second you made that phone call, I snapped. You told me you were divorcing me and laughed about me scrambling for a new place to live. You didn't just betray me, Tyler, you tried to ruin me. So don't stand there and act like you're the victim. Nicole stepped even farther back, her gaze bouncing between us. This is insane, she muttered, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. You didn't tell me any of this, Tyler. You said everything was under control. He turned to her, panic creeping into his voice. Nicole, I can fix this, I just need. Don't, she cut him off, her voice like ice. Don't drag me into your mess. Without another word, she spun on her heel and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. I turned to Tyler with a satisfied smile. Looks like you're on your own. He sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. Amelia, please. I screwed up. I know that. But you don't have to do this. You're right, I said, grabbing a folder off the kitchen counter and setting it on the coffee table. I don't have to. But I'm going to. His eyes flicked to the folder. What's that? Divorce paperwork. Chloe already drafted it. Sign it quickly, and this will be over sooner for both of us. He stared at the folder like it was a ticking bomb. You really hate me that much? I laughed, bitter and low. Hate you? No, Tyler. I pity you. You had everything, someone who loved you, a home we built together, and you threw it away for your ego. I stood tall, heart pounding but unshaken. I want you out by the end of the day. Take your things and figure out your next move. This is the last grace I'm giving you. He opened his mouth, probably to argue, but thought better of it. His shoulders sagged. Fine, he muttered. I'll go. Good, I said, walking to the door. And don't even think about trying anything else. Chloe's already handling the legal side. Next time you cross a line, it's going through the courts. I opened the door. Tyler slowly stood, grabbed his coat, and walked past me without another word. His footsteps were heavy, defeated. For a brief second, I felt something, a pang of what could have been, if he'd been the man I thought he was. But it passed. I shut the door and locked it with the new key I'd had made. This was my home now. And no one, especially not Tyler, was going to take it from me again. The silence afterward was deafening. For the first time in years, I could actually breathe. The space felt lighter. Clearer. Mine. That evening, Lauren came by with takeout and wine. She dropped onto the couch and sighed dramatically. So, is he really gone? Gone and not coming back, I said, pouring 2 glasses. I gave him until the end of the day. He didn't argue. She raised her glass. To fresh starts and well-earned victories. I clinked mine against hers. To never letting someone walk all over me again. Over the next few days, I reclaimed the apartment one corner at a time. I rearranged the furniture, swapped out the artwork, and filled the space with color and warmth, my taste, my life. It wasn't just redecorating. It was healing. It was becoming whole. Chloe called with updates, her voice brimming with confidence. The fraud charges are off the table since the buyer backed down, but the divorce paperwork is moving fast. Once he signs, you're officially free. Free. The word hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just the marriage. It was the years of silence, resentment, and doubt I'd buried. And now, it was all being lifted. Tyler tried to reach out a few times. Apologies. Guilt trips. Empty promises. I made a mistake. Can we talk? You're going to ruin me, Amelia. Is that what you want? I didn't reply. Because for once in my life, I didn't owe him anything. And that silence? That was mine, too. I wasn't going to waste another ounce of energy trying to fix something that had been broken beyond repair. Tyler had made his choices, and now, he was living with the consequences. By the end of the week, the apartment felt transformed. It wasn't just cleaner or more organized, it felt warmer, calmer, unmistakably mine. I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, city lights blinking outside the window, and let myself breathe, really breathe. Tyler's betrayal had hit hard, but in a strange way, it had also been a gift, a brutal wake-up call. For too long, I'd convinced myself that I didn't deserve more, that I had to be grateful for whatever scraps of attention or respect he was willing to throw my way, but not anymore. I hadn't just reclaimed my apartment. I'd reclaimed my life. A month later, that life looked nothing like it had before. The apartment wasn't drastically renovated, but it felt like a completely different world. Every corner reflected me, my style, my energy, my freedom. Tyler's clutter was gone, so was the suffocating cloud of his presence. In its place was space, light, possibility. The divorce moved swiftly. Chloe handled everything with surgical precision, making sure Tyler had no wiggle room to cause trouble. He signed the papers without drama, no dramatic outbursts, no emotional pleas, just a quiet, resigned acceptance. Maybe he finally realized he had no leverage. Maybe he just didn't care anymore. Either way, it was a clean break, bittersweet, yes, but deeply satisfying. One afternoon, while sorting through an old drawer, I found a photo of Tyler and me from years ago. We were smiling, arms slung around each other, looking young and full of hope. I stared at it for a moment, letting the memory pass through me. There had been good times, brief, glimmering moments when I believed we were building something real. But those moments had long since been buried beneath years of neglect, gaslighting, and betrayal. I slipped the photo into an envelope and tucked it into the back of a drawer. I didn't need to display it anymore, but I wasn't ready to throw it away either. It was a piece of the past, a reminder, not a definition. When the divorce was finalized, Lauren and I went out to celebrate, rooftop bar, city skyline, laughter we hadn't shared in years. You're glowing, she said, raising her glass. Single life suits you. I smiled, the warmth in my chest real and deep. It's not about being single, I said. It's about being free. For the first time in years, I'm not living by someone else's rules. We clinked glasses to that. As the night wore on, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, pride, not just for surviving what had happened, but for rising through it. I wasn't just picking up the pieces, I was building something new. Back home, I started planning, not just for the next few weeks, but for the life I wanted. The apartment had become a symbol of everything I had reclaimed, but I knew I wouldn't stay there forever. Someday, I'd move on to a place with no ghosts, no shadows, no memories of Tyler lurking in the corners. Until then, I was determined to live fully, to take back every part of myself I'd lost, to choose joy. That night, Curled up on the couch with a soft blanket and a heart at peace, I thought about that phone call, Tyler's voice smug, laughing, so sure he'd won. And I smiled. His arrogance had been his downfall. My quiet strength had been my salvation. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the start of a new chapter. A chapter where I called the shots. Where I chose happiness, on my terms. And after a long, painful journey, I finally felt what I hadn't in years. I felt free.